Welcome back to Weird Careers. I'm Eric.
And I'm Danny.
All over the world, people have jobs. And some of those jobs we don't even know exist.
There are professions that we don't know much about. And there are jobs that aren't, let's say, dinner table friendly.
Well, we're here to explore all of that on this here podcast.
We will be interviewing workers from all over the world about their strange and interesting jobs.
That's right, everything from specialized retail to sex work. Plus, everything in between and outside of said box. Oh, and if you're not already, please make sure that you are accompanied by an adult for this podcast. It can get spicy.
Throughout the course of this series, we will take a deep dive into each and every career we stumble upon.
Do you think that you have an interesting job? Maybe you do. Maybe your neighbor does. Maybe your best friend or your weed dealer. Okay, maybe not that last one. But if you do, stay tuned to the end of the show on how to get a hold of us. On today's show, we have musician Mike Ayley, most famously known as the bassist for Marianas Trench, but also now with the solo album Golden Hour. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's funny. It's called Golden Hour, but it is about 15 minutes. I had this idea of doing like 4 parts and making a complete hour worth of music, but it's a lot of work putting out an EP and recording it and all that stuff. It took longer than I thought. So we'll see. There's there's 2 other of 3 parts already written and demoed. Usually when I record this stuff though, while I'm in the studio, other ideas come, and that's the goal, is to have more stuff bump off the weakest of the totem pole, you know?
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting. But we will definitely get into that a little bit later when we talk about kind of your we've got a couple of fan questions actually that we're going to bring.
Oh, good.
In.
Let's do it.
But first of all, before we get into all that nitty gritty, tell us what it is that you do professionally.
So I am Mike Ayley. I am the bass player in the band Marianas Trench. Have been since the entire time we put out music. There was an early version of the band years before I was in it, with different members, but Ian wasn't. It's so many generations, but since the first album, it's been the same 4 guys. And I am also the merch logistics expert within the crew. That's my side job in the band.
Love it. That's awesome. That's great. That's awesome.
Did you have to go through any vocal or instrumental classes?
So I did some choir in school anyway, in elementary school. It was part of our curriculum, and then I did some additional on the side.
Okay.
So some singing stuff. When I joined Marianas Trench, anybody would take vocal lessons with Josh's mom, because she was a world-class instructor, and help us get some basics, so we would tune well and sing well and use some sort of technique. I'm still taking lessons at speaking. I just took a speaking thing because I was like, my throat gets sore all the time when I talk, and really sore after a while. And after an hour, I'm like, my voice starts crapping out, and then I can't sing. So I'm working on that. Having this cough for the last couple of weeks, sort of put off the exercises, because I'm just trying to not die. And then with the instruments, I played trumpet when I was like 11, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that range, a couple different times, like in a marching band first, and then in 9th grade. And then the bass I just picked up and started playing, like, I don't know, I stole it from my from my brother's roommate at the time. They had an apartment in the basement, and I would go down when nobody was home, and I'd like try to figure out a song to him, like the piano and then the bass guitar, and then I couldn't stop because I just felt so cool making. It was just like literally try to like make a nursery rhyme, like dum 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 dum. Oh no, that's not it. And I just figure out nursery rhymes and stuff the very first time, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then I started like mimicking, albums that I like Jane's Addiction was cool, and because you really hear the bass parts in that, so stuff like that.
What age did you pick up your first guitar then?
Teens. My teens. It was a little late to the party with that. But I remember asking my friend, we were not cool guys, and I'm like, we should start a band. He's like, okay. He said, do you want to play guitar or bass? He's like, I want to play guitar. And I'm like, okay, I'll play bass. And that's how it was decided.
Love it.
And then we went out, and then we went out and bought these like metal shredder. I had like a Warlock bass, and he had something else. And then and we never played a show. We jammed once or twice, but it got me where I needed to be.
Has there been any that you would like to play that you haven't played?
Instruments?
Yes.
I would love to be a badass piano player.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I feel like if you can play piano, first of all, the theory, it's all right there, and you'll understand almost every instrument.
Right.
And I've like in the last couple of years had to play guitar a lot more. I could sort of, play the chords and things like that. But now I have to record it and like chase tones and learn how to use effects better. And it's really, really fun. And it's funny because I don't play bass very much anymore because it's a little limited for songwriting purposes.
Right.
But sometimes I'll start some songs with the bass. I'll just like start with a groove and then like, what can I do with this? And actually Up 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 and another one both came about that way. But those, piano would be one I'd love to add. Drums would be cool, but they're too big, too loud, and too hard to set up. They take forever to set up.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, there's digital drums now, right? You could
it's not cool though. It's got to be like you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you can't make a face after it for anybody who's within earshot, it's just not as cool.
I mean, that's fair. It is fun seeing the joy on Ian's face when he's drumming. I do it. There's this one clip of Ian when he's doing during the celebrity status video where you can just see the absolute pure joy on his face while he's drumming. You can just like, yeah, that's it. That he's loving it.
I'm gonna have to watch the video again and look for that part.
So you probably get asked this a lot, but I'm going to ask it anyways. And it's funny because every time the band gets asked this, it's always a different answer, and I love it. How did Marianas Trench come to be?
The band itself?
Yes,
the members? Okay, so I'll just give you the Coles Notes accurate version. Josh and Matt were in high school together. They were in a high school band, and Ian and I were in another band, and the band that Ian and I were in broke up, as bands do, because it's hard to get everybody pointing on the same arrow at the same time with the same intensity. And then Ian joined this band called Ramsey Fiction, and then I went out to support him when he got that gig, and I was like, wow, this band is really good. Look at all this, so much singing and harmonies, and they're really professional. And then they went through a change in their lineup, and I was literally sitting down in coffee shops with Ian while he was interviewing other bass players to be in Marianas Trench. And I was like, I don't think that's the guy. And then I was like, I don't know, that guy's not that cool, and then things like that. And then he was like, hey, I got to let you know that Matt and Josh have both asked, does Mike want to try out? And I did, but I didn't want to like step into his world, force myself into his thing. I didn't want to be like, oh, can I be the guy? You know what I mean? I also hadn't played a lot in a couple of years. So I said, yes, I do. And then he said, okay, well, you can do an audition on Saturday with the band, and you're going to need to know how to play Far From Here, and you're going to need to know how to play another song. What was it? Far From Here, because it was like the busiest bo doo 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 doo. And if you can play that, you can probably play the other ones. Shoot, why can't I remember what the song was? Anyway, I learned 3 because there's another song that Ian had a demo of that I also really liked. But so that was like a Saturday rehearsal. But Friday, Josh was like, hey man, you want to hang out before like the rehearsal or something? I was like, sure. So I went over to Josh's, and he's like, I just want to hear you, like, can you sing this part? Like, ooh, bop, bop, good vibrations. I was like, yeah, I can do that. And he goes, okay, keep doing that. And then I'm going to sing this other part and play this underneath. And I just want to keep singing that. And then I did. And he's like, oh, okay, so that's pretty good. So let's try another part on top of that. And it ended up becoming a full phrase. And then he was doing this other thing. And then he was like, cool, then. Okay, well, let's go. I'll just drop you off back at home. And in my head, I knew that was the audition.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other one was a formality, but like that was the real test. And I played a little bit. I brought a bass, but mostly it was a singing one to see, can you actually sing? Can you sing in tune? Can you learn the part you're given other than just what comes to your head? Things like that. And then, of course, that day, Matt's like, hey, man, before you your audition tomorrow. Do you want to like practice, you, me, and Ian? We'll just like get a sneaky extra practice in before we let Josh. So we also did another one of those and played all the 2 or 3 songs about 3 or 4 times. And then the next day I went and did the audition, and then it went pretty well. And then we sort of finished, and Josh didn't say anything, and the guys didn't say anything. I'm like, huh, I did okay. You know, he's like, okay. I'm walking back to Ian's car, and I'm like, well, at least I tried, I guess. Shucks. And then Josh is down the road, is like, hey, Mike. Yeah? Want to be in the band? Okay. Cool. It was so unofficial, like unformal. Anyway, it was really fun.
That's so funny.
I like it.
I did pull up the Fix Me album because I'm now curious what the other song was you had to learn. And then it reminded me of the song Decided to Break It.
It wasn't that one.
It
I was
wasn't?
thinking that because that one has so much singing in it that I wouldn't have known any of the parts yet. That's got a lot.
Who says what the fuck at the beginning?
Ian.
That's
so
Ian?
We were recording that, and that for that song, I think we had the drums in a little dry drum, more like a guitar-sized room, but the drums fit. To get that really tight. I think it was on that, like, we definitely used that room for push, like the verses. We might use it on Decide to Break It, and then Ian's like, what the fuck did I do wrong? Like doing that Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. I can't even do it. And then I love that the count-in isn't even like right. But
it's not.
No, it's 1, 2, 3, or something like that. Like, it's really weird. But we're like, let's just leave it in there. It's kind of fun.
So how does being in a big band, like pretty much a household name at this point, how does that affect your personal life?
Not very much, actually. Every once in a while, when we're on tour, people will come up and say, oh, are you the guy from Marianas Trench? Or especially because usually you're walking around with another guy from the band, at least. So it starts to add, like, the math adds up, and they know you're probably in town because you're playing a show tonight or tomorrow or did yesterday, kind of thing.
Right.
At home, every once in a while, people will come up and be like, hey, are you Mike from Marianas Trench? And I always like it because I don't usually walk around with a mohawk at home unless it's like some work related thing, or I'm going out and trying to feel cool with my wife, like we're having a fun night out.
That's fair.
So I always figure if people recognize me, then they're like real fans. So I always appreciate that, and it's never like it's not impede my daily life. It's always a nice moment when that happens.
Well, that's great. That's awesome. How long, speaking of your tour, when you go on tour, how long do those go for, and what has been your longest tour to date?
Okay, so if we do a Canadian tour these days, like put out an album, we'll do like the A Market tour or whatever, like basically Ontario and West, maybe out to Montreal, which sucks. I wish we could just go all the way coast to coast in one run, because we usually get everywhere twice and the East Coast once per album cycle, and it's not really fair. I'd rather just do the whole thing once and then just do like summer festivals. But generally, I'd say a Canadian tour is about 3 weeks long. A US tour is closer to 6 weeks long. When we've done Europe, it's about 4. Australia is like 2-3 days. Like the Australia run we just did was just 3 shows, but it was like, you land a couple days early because the jet lag's 18 hours or whatever it is. Then you play a show, day off, play a show, and then that's it, right? We have gone there though, and on one particular tour played Auckland and Perth, so that was 5 days. So it would have been, closer to 2 weeks. The longest tour we've ever done, we did a double national Canadian tour, playing every market, not just the A markets. Like,
oh shit!
So it was like 20 shows one way, 20 shows the other, or more. But we went west to east with, who the hell was it? I think it was with Faber Drive and Tupelo Honey. So an Edmonton band and like another Vancouver band. It was also in 604. Nice. And I think that's that tour. It's a little bit of a blur by now. So we started in Edmonton or Grand Prairie or something like that, and then went all the way across to play these like smallest towns in New Brunswick, and then turned around and then jumped on a tour going back. It was just Tupelo Honey and Marianas Trench at that point, and we would alternate first and second on each night. Nice. Opening up for Everclear.
Oh wow.
Which is pretty cool. And then, but the whole thing was about 8 or 9 weeks. It was somewhere in the 60-day range, but we were living pretty cheap. 4 guys to a hotel room because we couldn't afford. We didn't want to lose money or lose as little as possible, right? It's just like I'm a business mind too, and I'm like, it's just I can't accept blowing cash on stuff that doesn't get somewhere, right?
Of course.
So we did that, and we also had like a $20 a day food budget or something. So you'd be like, I can get my $6 Tim Horton meal, and a McDonald's meal and a snack. You're like, that's about all I can get a day without spending personal money that I didn't have for all of us. And I remember playing the last show we played was in Vancouver at a place called the Plaza. And my mom was there, and she was like, oh, it's actually a little bit hard watching the show because you guys just all look like so sick. We're like gaunt from like
no.
But we didn't see it because it was just this gradual decline.
Yeah.
That was a little too long to do it that way. Now when we tour, we have a tour bus, so we don't have to get up at 6 a.m. and drive for 8 hours for sound check in Thunder Bay from Winnipeg or whatever it is. We go to play the show, and you sleep as long as you can. Often it is still only 8 or 9 in the morning when I get up, but you can sleep 7 or 8 hours of semi-quality sleep on the bus. And you don't have to worry about the stress of driving and navigating and booking the hotels. You have people to help you with that.
Nice.
And I tell you, man, because we did it all ourselves for the first 100 plus shows, maybe 150, we appreciate the work everybody does, and we do know the value they add and the weight they take off our shoulders. That's why we love our crew so much. Maybe we really get along with the people we tour with.
That's a good thing.
When you're touring when you're with a certain amount of with these people for an extended period of time, right? You're going to get to know these people. You're going to naturally pop up in conversation with these people.
Oh, we live in the same bus, so
well, exactly, right? So you might as well make it pleasant.
Well, and the thing is, it's not just you're not just with them for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, because the core of the crew, like there will usually be 6 to 8 other guys. They're with you for the whole album cycle, most of them. Some of them will get other gigs that they have to take because, it's a longer run and everybody needs to work. But like your tour manager and your inner monitor guy and often your guitar tech or whatever it is, merch person or something, it's the same person a lot of the time. So you're with them sometimes for years, like they're a chosen external family. I don't understand why some bands choose to try to segregate the talent from the, you know what I mean? It's so stupid. I from agree. The hardest working people on earth.
As a thespian, I totally agree with that. Doing theater, I mean, your show doesn't happen without these people behind the scenes. It doesn't exist. So I mean, the appreciation for all of those people, they put in the hardest work. They do. They put in the hardest work.
Really long days. Like, they work so hard.
I've been to a couple of your shows. And I did go on your Ever After tour, and like that set alone, like you having to worry about harnesses and cables, lighting effects, sound effects, make sure the stage is all set up and like
the Jack in the Box are just so big.
My god. Oh my god, that thing was huge. I remember when that thing was rolled on the stage. Holy crap. But
it was awesome.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome.
And the risers, Matt and I would come up on the risers in the back, and then low smoke in the stage. But there were like, so on that tour we would have 2 buses. So it was the band and 4 additional guys on our bus. So 4 crew there, and then I think 11 or 12 on the other bus. You can sleep 12 on a bus fairly comfortably.
Cool.
There are 12 beds. Where the bags go is always the problem. But so we had 16 crew, and then there'd always be like local hands doing some additional work as well. But there's like, you need the experts that know what needs to be done, right?
Of course. That's awesome.
So then what's it like or I guess that is backstage kind of with all the crew?
Oh, it's different though. I think the coolest thing about being backstage, I mean, it's just usually in the arenas, it's just hockey dressing rooms with like draping over the benches, and then there's like usually a couch that still has the price tag on it because they're going to return it to the store after the show and things like that, and then a table with your snacks and a couple of drinks and things like that. But it's like a little like a rolling sideshow that's backstage of everybody, and the other bands have their own rooms. You're sort of all going from the washroom to the catering at different times to get your food, and it's pretty neat. And one part that I really love though is, I don't know if you know the movie Almost Famous. but when they're backstage, you can always hear like the murmur of the band that's on stage right now, and they're
Yeah.
having conversations. That's exactly what it's like. It's not quiet, and I love it. It's like the opening band becomes like almost a subconscious soundtrack for the tour.
Nice.
So like we did Down with Webster and like whatever that. There's one song that's really cool, and every time that was on, I knew, okay, we're about 30 minutes from changeover, and like things like that.
Nice.
You don't even realize you know it, and it's just cool that like I don't know, it's pretty neat. And then the buses, we had with that particular tour, Sean Hook, John Hook and us, and was that Down with Webster? That one maybe it wasn't. But we got snowed in the city, couldn't make the thing, so we're like stuck in a small town called Cache Creek, and there's like 3 buses in a tour parking lot and semi trucks, and everybody's just like ah. So we just like go to Denny's and have mimosas or whatever.
There you
Like, what else
go.
can we do, right?
Exactly.
That was sorry. I was just I was remembering that tour. That was
So one of
Simple Plan.
The Simple Plan was Down with Webster. The one where we got
Yes.
snowed in was a different one. It was
okay.
on one of the Astoria ones. The
Nice.
Simple Plan, where they were the headliner on that one run we did, the very beginning of Ever After, was amazing because those guys are so nice.
Mhm.
They're really, really nice. They're very professional, and they were very understanding that we were learning how to become a bigger band because we were growing pretty quickly through Masterpiece Theater and into that album cycle. And we were all nice guys, so we weren't like, we need this and this and this on stage. They're like, you can have this and this. You know, as the opening band, you don't get to have all the tricks because the headliner supposed to look like a headliner.
Mhm.
And they were nice enough to allow us to use, maybe an extra thing or have an extra piece of merch, and then
Nice.
welcomed us on the tour with like, welcome to the tour, here's a bottle of champagne, good luck, guys. And
nice.
And they were really nice, and we learned a lot about how to treat other bands. When immediately after that, we did the
That's
US
amazing.
tour, and then we
Mhm.
did our own headlining arena tour. But the one we did with them was part of the reason we could do it, and
That's
do it
awesome.
right, and be good to the bands that were with us.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
So how are the VIP crowds?
What do you want to know? What do you mean? It depends where we go. In
Yeah.
Canada, United States, and Australia, there are tons of people. They're really heavily sold. In Europe, it's not as much of a thing. So we would do them, and sometimes you'd have like 10 people, and sometimes you'd have 30 or 40 people. But in North America, it's usually 100 plus. When you have 10 people, it's a little hard because you want to give them the full experience, but everybody's too shy to ask a question.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so I guess we'll just start talking about I don't know what, and then hopefully you guys open up and then ask some questions.
Yeah.
But I really like the crowds. I like the questions. There's a lot of frequent questions that we get a lot, and then there are a lot that you get surprised by, and I love those ones.
Like what, for example?
Well, like, what was your favorite video to shoot? And you get asked that one a lot, or what's your songwriting process? But it's hard to think of the ones that are different because they're different, and I've been like, whoa, that was cool, and then I forget what it was, right?
Yeah.
But I always love that. I love when people think of something or have a different perspective on it or something like that,
Yeah, that's for sure.
And then they're always really nice. We have the nicest, most supportive, loyal fans of any band I've seen. I feel like this is like the Swifties are like this, except ours are, can't say cooler. That alienates a lot of people, but, and there's a lot of overlap. But I love our fans. I love who they are. They're emotional like us. They're passionate like us. A lot of them travel to shows all over the world and many shows on the tour, which is just fantastic. So many familiar faces, and I'm really, really bad with recognizing faces. It's like, there's like IQ charts for, your IQ is this, but your emotional quotient is this. And I'm like, if there was a scale for ability to recognize people, which there must be, I'm like way at the bottom. And I can't help it. It's quite frustrating, but I still recognize hundreds of faces. So that means I'm seeing them a lot,
That's awesome. Oh, the Astoria instrumental album, was that released for the fans?
I don't know. We don't know what happened there. All of a sudden it was out there and we're like, I don't know what that is. Like,
really?
Neat, though. Yeah, I don't really know what that was all about.
I loved
Uh,
it. It kind of allowed me to fuck around with some covers.
yeah, and you
And I
know
like
what? Of
that.
all the albums we've done, I think that one is the closest to being able to stand alone instrumentally.
Yes.
There's so many cool string things going on in that album, and those transitions are already instrumental. Between
Hmm.
there's like 4 of them on there, so I wasn't disappointed it was up there. I just thought that was a really unusual but cool decision that the label made. I think. I mean, I
I
don't remember seeing
I
any emails about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool because
Yeah,
all of a sudden us fans were like, oh, they've released an instrumental version of the album. Then you listen to it and you're like, okay, that's beautiful.
you hear more.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's things you wouldn't hear, and then you go back and listen to the actual album, and then you hear it. And you're like, oh, well, that's really cool.
and it's funny because it was always adding something to the moment. You just weren't aware what was adding that thing to the
Hmm.
moment, and then you hear it and you're like, oh, cool. Josh's production is like, it's just, it's a whole different level.
Hmm.
Even when I was working on my own stuff, I almost didn't, because I was like, I don't know, man, what's the point? I can't compete with that. Like, his production is so good, the singing and the writing, and I was like, God, it's like I feel like I'm a 7th grade kid competing with a university professor, and then I was like, oh, but I'm not competing. I'm just
No.
doing this because I want to and I love it. And Josh didn't come up and say, I'm gonna beat you. He was like, good job. And you
Hmm.
realize that it's not a competition. It's just it's an emotional outlet and a creative thing that makes you feel good. So but going back to the point, he's like, I remember listening to Phantoms recently just on AirPods or something like that. And I was like, God, the fucking details. It's so good.
There, you guys are, yeah, the little things, and I listen to the every time I listen to the album, it's like, oh, I didn't pick that up before. A buddy of mine, we were actually talking recently, and huge compliment to Josh. We actually songwriting, we compared him to singing, songwriting, just all of the talents that he has. We said he's would probably be a modern day um oh my god, I can't believe I'm brain farting on this. He's essentially yeah, there it is. He's essentially a modern day Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, I would. That's a pretty big statement.
Hmm.
But if I had to pick somebody, it's something along those lines. I'm not sure who else like does all those things that way right now,
Hmm.
and sort of like covers so many different genres. We've just
Oh
done so many
yeah.
different things within an album. Even there's just so many different things. Like from an a cappella intro in the last song to this, I think "The Killing Kind" is one of the best songs of all time.
100%.
I know it's also a big statement, but it's the only song of ours that I still, when I'm practicing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, all these songs, playing hundreds of shows with them, that's the only one I still like. As I'm playing it, I'm like turning it up, turning it up, turning it up, because I'm like, oh my god, and I get goosebumps. I'm like, still to this day, like if I played it now, it would happen. So I just think it's a crazy ride, and I remember hearing the pre-mixed, pre-mastered version and going, I fucking hate this song. It's all over the place. It's so disjointed. It's blah blah blah. It's gonna ruin the album. All this kind of things. And now I'm like, that's my favorite song ever. Once it
That's
came
hilarious.
together, and you iron it out, and like
Hmm.
those details, those little things, right?
Right.
Yeah, and one another thing to think about, like what band right now can do four-part harmony live that you get the way a cappella, the way that you guys do. I can't think of anybody that comes to mind right off the top of my head. Your harmony live is pitch perfect.
Backstreet Boys.
Are they still performing?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of who's performing. I'm sure there are a number of bands who could do it.
What
Some of those like funky soul bands, like
mm,
they can do it.
but like when I there was a video that, yeah, when you guys did your warm up in a back hallway and did Eleonora, oh my, I got chills. I got
Thanks.
chills. It was beautiful. I'm like, oh, look at you guys go. And then when you went into an abandoned pool or something like
Haunted
that.
swimming pool at the rave in
Yeah.
Milwaukee. Yeah,
Yeah. And then you did Eleanor there, and I'm like, oh
yeah,
my
that
god, it
was
was
the right
beautiful.
place, because that
Oh.
that is not an exaggeration. That venue is accompanied by many permanent residents
Ooh.
that live there. There's one in the pool. There are other ones around there. That place is crazy, and every cool band has gone through that venue somewhere along the way, from like you know, back in the grunge days, like Bush and Nirvana to
Hmm.
everybody. It's just, and they're, because they have like all these different rooms. So it's like a really small room, which we didn't play that one. It might be like 100-person club.
Hmm.
And then there's like the 600-700-person or 800-person room, which is probably where we play. And then way upstairs is this big ballroom that's like probably a 3,000-person room,
Wow.
where you get like, you know, a lot of the emo bands play there. And but like before they go to the arena level, like that was the spot, you know. And I remember I would just walk around that whole venue, even though it's this big creepy building, looking at all of the posters like before you play. I do that a lot, actually. I think we all do, because it just really makes you realize the history of the venue. And it's like these people played here on this stage. Like we played a venue that the Rolling Stones played on, little secret club in Toronto, the Horseshoe.
Mhm.
But they would do like little surprise shows there, and Green Day played
Nice.
there, like, you know, a few months before, doing like a warm up for American Idiot or something like that. And I'm just
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
That's neat. So would you say that's one of your like the one that particular venue? Would you say it's one of your favorite venues, or would there be? Do you have one that surpasses that?
oh, there's ones that surpass that. I think that one's, as far as vibe goes, really cool. I like the House of Blues venues in Chicago is really cool. Boston is really cool. Um, hmm, there's lots of great venues all over the place. I like the clubs. I think I like the big club show.
Yeah.
So like the arena is amazing because you can bring all this production. And it's like larger than life, and you can like Josh can fly, and like it's really cool to feel like
Yeah.
that. But I like the show where you're there with connected with everybody.
Yeah.
But I like it when it's also like 1,500 people, so it's still big and small at the same time. Like
Yeah.
it's packed in. There's so much energy. So like the House of Blues in Chicago is about 1,200 people capacity, 1,250 or something like that. And there's a main floor, and then there's like a balcony. There might even be a third balcony, and then you can like see
Wow.
people. Boston for sure has 3 or even 4 levels. That one's over 2,000. That's a huge venue, but we almost sold
Wow.
it. We almost sold it
That's
out.
awesome.
But I like I like any of those. A sold out big club show is probably my favorite.
That's awesome. Well, it's more intimate, right?
Intimate, and still feels like exciting, and like still like there might be a lot of us here, but we all still have this like little secret that they don't even, but it's sold. And it's like,
I
but you're
love
doing
that.
arenas, it's like everybody knows, like
Right. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
secrets are great.
God, here we mentioned earlier, oh yeah, I love getting those really out there questions.
Right.
I got one for you. This comes from a fan. Are there any songs that you have fallen out of love with over the years?
Out of love with?
Hmm.
There are songs I've fallen out of love with and back in love with, which I think is
Okay.
even more interesting.
Oh.
Um, you kind of fall out of love with all of them at one point or another, just because you're
Okay.
like on a tour,
Mhm.
but I still love them. You know, it's more just like we're ready for fresh music. So it's nice when there's a new album, although the first few shows suck because every song is new and it's a lot to concentrate on.
Hmm.
But I love all the songs. When I feel like they start to become a little too familiar or autopilot, like Cross My Heart, we played a lot, but I
Hmm.
still
Mhm.
like playing it. And then the longer we play it, the more I really focus on the performance. I'm like, if this was recorded, would it be good enough for the album?
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
I try to think like that and still put on a show.
Ooh.
And I think that's fun. Like really listen to Ian and lock in. But honestly, most of the times I just have so much fun playing all the songs because the crowd is into it, and then I'm into it. And this, like, after 2 years of really hardly playing shows and going back to playing everywhere, seemingly everywhere this last summer, I loved every single song.
That's
I
awesome.
find Beside You is a little hard to sing in tune, and I get a little frustrated because it's all those harmonies, but you can't really hear each other. And I think the thing I found out what I think the problem is. Ian's drums are in a different tune, a different key than the
Oh,
song,
okay.
and it's boom, 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 and like it's a really resonant tom, and it feels like it like doesn't jive with it. And I'm like, something's out of tune. It's driving me fucking crazy.
Now you
And listen to
know.
Matt, and me and Matt are usually quite like our parts pretty well line up,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I think he and I are doing okay. Josh is fine. Ian, I can't hear him as well, but it sounds pretty good, but something's not right. And I get frustrated when you hear something out of tune, right? Like,
Of course.
like if you ever listen to Oasis, I loved Oasis, but I have a really hard time listening to songs like Wonderwall now, because the more my hearing has learned to pick out tuning, mostly just for professionalism, like having to be constructive on my own, it's so out of tune, it's so pitchy, that song, that I can't do it. I can't listen to it anymore. It's like, why didn't they just run it through auto-tune? They should have just redo it and just fix it. It drives me crazy. Like, if you can't sing it, just fix it. Like,
you're my Wonderwall.
Yeah, except you were more in tune.
Oh, thank God.
He just goes a little bit sharp a lot, but he's got a great voice. Like, it's so much attitude. I just make it a little more in tune, and it would be so good.
Oh yes, the Breathe Out song.
Yes.
When my wife first heard that song, she cried, and she's like, "It sounds like he's talking directly to me." And she's like, "It's exactly what I wanted to hear." It's a beautiful song.
Thank you.
And like, it's honestly, it's probably one of my top played songs right now, because it is just such an inspirational song.
So you're the guy. You're the one who's listening to it. That's amazing.
Yeah, but that's me. That's me. You're like, who is this guy that's listening to it like 10 times a day? That's me. I love it. It's an amazing song. It gives such inspiration. There have been times where I've been like really down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I need to listen to this song, and I'll put it on, and I'm singing along, and I'm like going at the top of my lungs, and it's just like, all right, I feel better now. I'm good.
That's good. Yeah, that one is actually, it was one of the first ones for the EP. Just really came out of nowhere. I was sitting reading a book, and I was like, I want to do a song kind of like The Cure's Disintegration, where like the bass line is driving it. Fascination Street. Dun, 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 dun. But I'm like, I don't want it to be dark. I want it to be more positive and up. Yeah. So it totally ended up going way off from that. But I had a bass line. I was like thinking about it. And I'm like, or maybe the bass line could do this. And I was like, or that's the guitar part, and that's the bass line. I'm like, oh crap, I better go upstairs and start recording this. So I ran upstairs, and literally 8 hours later, like, it was one of the first things. So my recording skills at the time were the worst they've been, but the idea was down, drums, piano, all of it, except for the singing, maybe gibberish singing, within a day. And I was like, that was it. So then I figured out what it was about. And that one is sort of written for my son. It's like about that first worst day of your life when you're like, man, I didn't know it could hurt this much. And we've all had it. And I remember having those and being like, I don't know if I want to do this thing. It's like not worth it. If there's going to be a lot of days like this, I don't want to do it. If it's just one, maybe. But I don't know. I'm too young to have the character and experience of getting through it to know you can get through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking about him the first time he has that experience. And then I had an awful thought of, what if I'm not there when he needs me on that day? What if I'm on the other side of the world, or what if I'm just not with us? You never know, right? In this world, as like the least I can do is give him this to have there just in case I'm not, and maybe it's there for somebody else too. You know,
that's beautiful, man. That's
I
absolutely
like that.
beautiful.
So it doesn't have to get a billion streams. If it helps anybody, then it's already done its job.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's beautiful, right? We are going to take a quick ad break here. I just have a quick word from our sponsors. Don't turn that dial. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Mike Ayley from Marianas Trench, and you're listening to Weird Careers.
Are the big corporations taking your sales with fancy images that just aren't in your small business budget? Not to worry. At Cardinal Images, they take everything to heart. Cardinal Images is a small business supporting small businesses, so they get it. Check out cardinalimages.ca for their gallery and contact info. Also, if you're a listener of this podcast, you will receive not only your demo images, but your first shoot absolutely free. Just email Eric at cardinalimages.ca with the subject line podcast promo to receive your free shoot today. Cardinal Images, affordable pricing, professional images, and personable photography.
And welcome back to Weird Careers. We have Mike Ayley from Marianas Trench here with us today. Welcome back, Mike.
Thanks. Good to be back. That was a really tiring break.
Oh, I know, right?
So when you've been on tour, have you ever wanted to learn a language so that you could communicate with your fans? He's already nodding his head. Yeah.
Definitely. Most of the places we play are English first language,
Mhm.
Mm,
but when we're in Quebec, I know enough French to get through from learning in school.
Yeah.
And then in Europe, though, it would have been really cool, like to know German when we were there.
mhm.
Mhm.
And I would love to have known Korean when we were in Seoul because it's a really cool place. And in Germany, they all still know a fair amount of English, but in Korea, there's some people that can speak English, and it felt like that. Some that couldn't, some that couldn't. Where else do we go? Paris is French, so I could sort of fake it enough there too. Je ne parle pas beaucoup de français. I actually went to Chile once a long time ago,
Mhm.
for only like a week and a half or something. But for the months before, I learned as much Spanish as I could because it's that same thing you're saying. I just want to be able to be as close to communicating with the culture, be as much in the culture. And I think it's respectful to know as much as you can and to try.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
commendable. That's very respectable.
Yeah, I like that. So since being famous, do you find that you have some special treatment? So like people letting you go ahead of them in line or buying you your coffees, whatnot.
Well, that's so funny to me. I don't know why. If you're playing shows and we're in the venue, I don't mind if people let me do that because usually we have things we need to do.
Mhm.
They'll let you buy in the line, obviously, so you can get in and like play the show. But a little bit, I don't know. I don't usually think that just because what you do, you're known for doing it, that you should be treated differently. And I don't like when people think that like they race to the front of the car line and then cut in front of everybody that just waited and merged at an earlier point. And I'm like, I don't know, why is your time more valuable than ours? That kind of thing, right?
Right.
However, it is part of like the game, and sometimes you have to take advantage of it if you just have to. So I remember going to Las Vegas once with my best friend, and I wanted to go to a pool party, but it was going to be like 110 degrees out, like it was like the Hard Rock Hotel or something like that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to be out in the sun for hours, and I was like, God, but those cabanas are like minimum spend $3,000, and I was like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to email an address they find on their website, see what happens. And at first I was like, hey, I'm Mike from Marianas Trench, blah, 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 blah. I wonder if we could get like get a cabana for the day. But one of the poolside things would be fine. And then it's like, just ask for what you want. They'll tell you they can give you less, right? People always do that. We all do that. We're like, but I would settle for this. Well, the negotiation's over. We can keep you happy and give you less, right?
Yeah.
So I just said, I would love to have access to a cabana and have a bottle of Jack Daniels and a bottle of vodka and some mix, and I'll post about it on social media, see what happens. And they're like, sure, can you use these tags? And you don't have a minimum spend. If you can tip the service team, that'd be great. So I tipped them like we had a $3,000 tent, but we didn't have to pay for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
That was
though.
one of the few ones. But it's funny because I asked other people, like at the label and like the US label, I'm like, can you guys help me with this stuff? And they're like, sorry, didn't have any luck. I'm like, but you're like into publicity, and one of the agencies also did actors, and I'm like, I'm sure you guys can do this shit. And everybody came up dead, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do it myself. Got everything I wanted everywhere that weekend.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like it, and it's so cool that sometimes you just gotta ask. And then it's funny because I've gone with the whole band and crew, and like, this is gonna be really cool. We're gonna bring the party to like this pool party, and did it again, and they're like, we can't give you anything. So I must have just got really lucky that time.
That's funny. You've traveled all over the world now. Like you've been everywhere.
Getting there.
Getting there. So you've seen people from all over the world, fans from all over the world now. What is the craziest thing that a fan has tried to give you at a show? And is there anything from a show that a fan has given you that you've kept?
Oh, for sure. I have things that I've kept. Some of them are down in like storage. Some of them were like my wife gave me a bracelet. Actually, she didn't give it to me at the show, but she gave it to me when she wasn't my wife,
Aw.
and I wore it, and we did this live stream. We were about to go back out on tour during the Astoria tour, and she saw the live stream from the record label, and she saw what I was wearing, and she's like, "I'm gonna go. He's wearing the bracelet. I'm gonna go to that show." And she did, and she spontaneously showed up, and then we like ran into each other in like the lobby when I was setting up merch for the day, and then we talked, and then we ended up because we'd already met, and then it was like we met and we hung out. That's a Kaleidoscope is actually about. It was about that day we met and then had to leave at the end of the day. I was like, God, I think that was her, the one. But I live in Vancouver and she's in New York. It's never gonna work. So we were both like, it's gonna hurt. What's the point of like, we barely know each other, even though it was like the writing was on the wall, the electricity was amazing. The chemistry like just got along so well. And then it ended up working out, but that was one of the things I kept. That it's funny, using that bracelet probably was the luckiest thing in my life, because she is honestly the best human I know. And we still have all these moments. Just yesterday we're in a restaurant, having breakfast and about to do a social media post. I'm like, is it weird if I post this? And she was like asking, do you care if I post this? And it was literally the exact same thing we're both gonna post. And I was like, whoa, this is freaky. But I'm like, anyway, it was just like, I don't know if you followed my Instagram, but like she posted a picture of herself with the balloons for the Christmas song.
Yep.
And I was like, this is my wife, like with love, because she's just like, I think she's so beautiful. But she turned around and was like, do you think we could post this? And it's like, yeah, this is my wife. I married this girl or something like that. Like, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, literally, we turned our phones to each other. So in sync. She's the best.
That's amazing.
So that's my best. That's my best sort of fan item story.
I love
That's
it.
adorable.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So they're from writing to touring to and well, everything in between. Has that process changed since becoming a dad?
Oh, man, I have no time. Right now, I have no time. Bella is our baby, and she just started daycare, so I'm going to start having time. And I think as long as I'm not like coughing worse than this tomorrow, going to the studio tomorrow, and then probably 2 to 3 times a week. And Ian and Matt are going about 2 to 3 times, and Josh is sort of there pretty much every day, obviously, because it's his studio that he has the keys to. But it definitely changed things. I think the coolest thing, though, which isn't really about the process, but the coolest thing about becoming a parent is it's really grounding and humbling. And I remember we were just finished Masterpiece Theater, and then Ever After came out, and the band was like to arenas and multi-platinum album, all these semi-hit songs or hit songs, number ones on Much Music and top tens on radio and things like that. And then I come home from tour, and then I've got my son, and he poops his diaper, and I got to wipe that butt, and I was like, this is so good. because it really keeps you from like letting that sort of wonderland world become the real world, because it's not. It's so not that. It's just what happens when you're out there. Kind of it's like a bubble waiting to burst. But if you have this real thing around you, then it's just like this fun place you go every once in a while, and you come home and you have like real stuff.
That's awesome. That's one thing I've noticed about you, especially you guys as a band as a whole. You guys are all very down to earth, very level-headed. You can be approached, which is nice.
Part of that is also about the first album cycle, where we were our own tour manager and merch people, and did every single thing. It keeps you pretty humble, and we met every single fan, and we're like shaking hands with everybody and getting to know them and taking pictures. And the next show there'd be 40 people and 60 people and 80 people, and we did it every show. And I think that we never took the fans for granted, because we met the first 10,000, and understand that now we're meeting more who are just as excited about the music as the first 10,000 were, but they just stumbled across the music a few years later. And I think that keeps you pretty, like just as you're saying, pretty humble.
That actually kind of flows right into what I was going to say next. My best friend, Catherine from Ontario, she has grown up listening to you since your first album. And so when I told her we had this interview, she's like, oh, so excited. So she wants to know what's changed from the like when you first started until now.
The industry's changed a lot. The beginning, it was all about selling this, 4-inch diameter silver disc to everybody as much as you can, and that was how you determined what was successful. And then it was about selling those, and then also these digital singles on this thing called iTunes. And then it was like just iTunes was really the thing, and then it's like this other thing that everybody's gonna hate called Spotify. And I'm like, now that's the business. It's funny how so the business has changed like crazy. The social media platforms have changed so much, from MySpace to Twitter to Instagram, and Instagram's still a factor. In fact, my preferred platform. And TikTok's a little bit too disposable stuff in my mind. It kind of fries my brain a little more, so I don't love it as much. I think it's cool how in the industry, because of those things that aren't regulated by the music industry gatekeepers, everybody has a chance. Although I find it's a little challenging because everyone has a chance. There's a lot of stuff out there that maybe there's a reason it didn't get there. It's just like the C instead of like, I feel like when I was putting out the Mike Ayley music, I'm like, I want people to hear this, but there are millions of new songs coming out every year, millions. And how do I get people to hear this? And people don't want to click a link on Instagram. They don't. You'd be like, oh, it's right here. All you do is click it. This might be your favorite song. You might have a brand new favorite song, and man, do we all love having one of those songs. But to get somebody to go, I'll listen to that is so difficult. Even with me, a lot of times like, I don't want to do it right now. I don't know why. And then now I'm like conscious that I'm making that decision. So for the people I want to support, I'll at least give it a shot, right? Most of the time. But it's so hard because they don't want to actually leave the platform. They just want to zone out, right? They don't want to like engage truly with what's going on there.
It's that instant gratification.
Yeah, but they might get a more instant, deeper 2.5 to 3 minute gratification. That's the thing.
Yes, agreed.
And then it might like really mean something like you were saying, like the way your wife and Breathe Out connect. Like that's I love when I find those songs. But the thing is, so it's cool that everybody has their opportunity now. But the problem is because there's so many people, it's like instead of trying to have like your little tadpole found in a lake, you're still a tadpole, but you're in an ocean. And it's just so much noise to try to get heard through. So it's for Marianas Trench, it's really, really lucky that we have that incredibly loyal fan base that that are actually waiting to hear it. I this other podcast I like called The Writer and the Writer Is. A couple times I've heard the host talk about like, you're writing songs, but nobody's waiting to hear it. Nobody's out there going, I wonder what they're going to write next, because they don't know it's coming. They're waiting to hear something they like, but they're not waiting for your next song. For us, we're lucky enough that there are hundreds of thousands of Marianas Trench fans who are waiting. And that is, that's amazing, especially because we take our time. We don't bump out an album every 14 months. This one's, going to be a pretty long time since the last, and a couple other gaps in there between Ever After and A Story, but they're still there. So, and I get it. It goes back to the other thing we're talking about for the albums, the songs, they're like, they're different. Like you're comparing it to Queen or something, but, it's not something you can get anywhere. It's not like if you like, especially in that emo era, if you like one band and they stop making, there are 30 other bands making similar songs. There are a few of them that really stood out. But in our case, there aren't a lot of bands doing what we're doing. So I think if that's what resonates with you, luckily for us, we're the place you can get it.
Which is great. I mean, you guys have, that's one thing I've always loved about Marianas Trench. You guys have a very unique sound. When you put out an album, it's almost thematic, which is, I love that.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know how many times I've actually pictured Masterpiece Theater and Fix Me and putting them together into a musical. How many times I've actually thought that through in my brain. which, by the way, if you ever interested, I have some thoughts. But from Marianas Trench, we've talked a lot about your time with Marianas Trench, but now you've just put out your first EP, Golden Hour, First Things First. And so we would love to tell us about that journey. Before we do that, though, here is a little snippet from Mike's song Up Up Up. Here it is.
Times of our lives may pass us by, but the memories survive. We're growing up, up all the time. We're growing up all the time. Over and over again, youth being spent. Over and over again. Over and over again, youth being spent. Over and over again.
Tell us, how did you go from being in a band to releasing your first album, and how different is it?
I'm not sure. We were chatting earlier about this song called "Breathe Out" and how it sort of came really quickly. It was one of those ones. I feel like there's a few songs that like the universe will give you as like your key to get in there or to get the ball rolling, but it's up to you to continue to do the work and like dig through the rocks and the soil to find the rest of the music or the finishing parts. Like, you know, I feel like some stuff floats and some stuff you have to go into the mind, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I learned about that in this one because Breathe Out came really, really, really quickly to me. And I was like, oh God, that was such an amazing day. And the music, as soon as I was finished with the bass, the guitar was waiting for me in my head. As soon as I was finished with that, there's this piano part. And I'm like, oh, that's cool in there. And the drums. And it was really, really like this really cool experience. And then the other songs like Kaleidoscope, which is actually my favorite one, maybe
Nice.
because of what it's about.
Mhm.
Maybe because it's the closest to my initial vision, the final product. I'm not sure. But that one I really had to work on. Like I had a whole different chorus, and then I was laying in bed and I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. I'd sung it, I'd done harmonies, I'd edited it, I'd like done days doing vocals, trying to figure out what it was and what the words were. Because it's sort of I'll hum stuff and then I'll like replace it with the words as I figure out what those are. Because they usually come last for me. And then I was laying in bed. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I woke up and I'm like, it's okay. Walked out to the computer, highlighted like 8 vocal tracks that were about a minute long or a minute and a half if you piece it all together. I was like, delete.
Woo.
And I was like, well, that's that. I still like the verses, and I'm like, but I'm gonna have to figure out what the hell that chorus is. And that's a weird feeling, but it was actually also made me feel really good because I'm like, I'm not just gonna settle for something that fills the space.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying everything there is the best option in the world, but it's at least the best I could come up with. And I think there are moments in Up Up Up, right before the sort of outro, that I love that guitar, and it's I kind of wanted it like to be the feature part, and then when it got mixed, it was sort of changed into this little thing that gets a bit bigger, but I want it to be like a wall of that part. So that's about the only part I'm like, didn't quite do the thing, but it still does the thing. So I don't know. I can't tell based on my taste and then the taste of the producer and mixer what it should have been. You know, sometimes it's hard to tell because you're hiring these people for their taste. And if they both came up with something like that, I'm like, maybe that's how it's supposed to be. But the recording process was weird. It was really fun. It got me through the sort of like midway through the first year of the COVID thing to the next year. It gave me something to put my energy into in a positive way. I didn't plan on putting out an EP, but then the songs kept coming, and then I started sending them to the label to see what they thought. And they said, what do you want to do with these? I said, I don't know. I guess I want to put them out. I said, okay, let's do it. As simple as that.
All right, so we're getting down to the final. We've got 3 signature questions that we ask every guest that we've got on, and we'll hand that over to Danny.
So what's the best part about what you do?
I think it's pretty awesome to get to see so much of the world, to get to do it with your best friends, and playing music's pretty awesome. The hearing damage, not so great. That's probably the biggest downside, actually. Do invest or protect it, but there's a little tinnitus that goes on there.
I bet there's with the because you guys do have those hearing protectors that you have in there, but I guess they only do so much, eh?
Yeah, and still, like, you have to play the volume, and you still have to hear it, and then, like, sometimes you need to hear more of your vocals, but, like, the cymbal's not that far away, so it bleeds in there, so it's also loud. Things like that. But I love seeing the world. I love getting to play with my friends. I miss being home sometimes, but it's not that bad because we're with some of our other best friends, you know.
Nice. So with there being an upside, the best part of what you do, obviously, you know what goes up, what must come down. There's a yin and a yang. What's the biggest downside to being a professional musician?
Yeah, the tinnitus is frustrating, but it's not that bad. Being away from your family can be a little rough, but it's also not that bad because we never do like those. We're on the road for a year. It's like 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, 6 weeks on, a few weeks off. It's never like in our busiest year, like we did about 6 months of touring. And when we release an album, it's usually closer to 4 or 5. And I think that's a better life-work balance than, like you look at Shawn Mendes having a mental breakdown or whatever he had. And I don't blame him because it's like, I don't want to be away for 10 months straight. And for him, he doesn't have like Matt and Josh and Ian that are like your best friends on stage with you that have been there since everything. You're like a fucking team that's seen everything and you got each other. And I'm sure the band loves him. They're really nice guys, his band. He's a really nice guy. All these great people. His sound guy, he's tour manager a couple times, and Tom Wood, and he's wonderful. But Tom's actually been there for him since the beginning. But being on stage and being the face, there's, it's up to him. And I feel really bad about that. But at least in us, it's broken up into, to chewable portions. Mm-hmm. Not like trying to eat the entire all-you-can-eat buffet by yourself.
Yeah.
and we're all doing it.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad you got your friends with you. That's a make or break. It sounds like it's
huge.
Love that you have that. Before we get into our last one, I just want to say a huge thank you so much for coming on today, Mike. Even though you're still a little bit under the weather, we do appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us.
I love this. I'm really happy to doing this, so no worries.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm having so much fun doing it too. Thank you. What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was really little, I wanted to be a pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Nice.
But I never played baseball. I would just like play with friends, throwing the ball around. I'm like, you're the catcher, I'm the pitcher. Except my voice wasn't that low then, but you know what I mean.
That's a completely different direction.
Yeah. And then when I was in my teens, I started falling in love with music and thought it was not a possible thing, but I wanted to do it. And then I was like, I'm also really good at like numbers and stuff. Like maybe I'll get into like investing, but I kind of never chose anything. And then when the music was there, I was like, oh, that's why, because that's actually what I want to do. And the opportunity came and I was like on it, with all of my teeth.
It just all fell right into place.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Made sense.
It's so great to hear that you're living your dream job, and it's
man, my life is great. I mean, there's always something you could say, but I'm playing music with my best friends, and my home life is happier than it's ever been, and I'm just I don't know, pretty lucky guy.
That's awesome. Well. Stay humble.
That sounds really good.
Thanks.
Anyways, thank you again, Mike, so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute treat. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Ayley from Marianas Trench. You can check out their albums on Spotify, Apple Music, and you can also check out Mike's new EP, Golden Hour, as well on Spotify and Apple Music. Thanks again so much for coming on today, Mike.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
Do you have a cool or interesting job? You never know. Believe it or not, your 9 to 5 may be more interesting than you think.
So don't be shy and shoot us an email at weirdcareerspodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you liked us, please give us a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to us. It really helps us to get seen.
Thanks for tuning in and exploring with us. We hope you will join us next time.
And until then, I'm Eric.
And I'm Danny.
Cheers.
Cheers.